Hello and welcome to the Marina Skua Podcast. My name's Marina, I'm a knitwear designer and yarn and fibre dyer based in the southwest of England, and today I'm going to show you lots of fun personal projects. Usually I show quite a bit of work stuff, but at the moment, beginning of 2025, I'm trying to focus a little bit more on projects that I enjoy and are meaningful to me and don't have deadlines attached, because last year was a lot of deadline crafting and the fun went out of it a little bit. So I do have one knitting project to show you and then quite a lot of other craft related stuff. So first up, I'll show you my knitting project. Just in case you're wondering, I am wearing my Welana cardigan, which has these big sleeves with some unusual cables, and we've got the same cables on the back, so it's a top-down raglan. And what I am knitting is in the same yarn, which is my hand-dyed Mendip 4-ply, and this one is an opula, which I think last time I talked to you I was a decent way through the yoke. But now I am almost at the bottom of the body. I think I've got another couple of centimetres to do, and then the hem. And this pattern I designed to have sort of elbow length sleeves, but there's also a long sleeved option, and so I'm doing the long sleeved option for this one, which I'm really excited about. I think it's going to be very pretty and just quite sort of moody and low contrast. I enjoy a bit of low contrast colour work. So yeah, that's sort of it on that one. I've been alternating my skeins, not all the way through, because it's hand-dyed yarn. I alternate when I change colours, because I know that these two colours are ones that don't tend to have loads of difference between skeins, like with some of my colours. Some have more like semi-solidness than others, and so some I know I need to alternate all the way through to make sure that you get an even effect and you don't get like a block where you transition from one colour to another, from one skein to another, and it's a very slightly different shade, because with hand-dyed yarns, even between skeins, you can have differences. But these ones are fairly regular, so I just alternate for like, when it looks like I'm about to start running low on one skein, I will start alternating in the other. And I also don't alternate them regularly. I don't just do every other row. I tend to do like one row of the new skein, 2 rows of the old skein, then one row of the new skein, and then like as I get through and I've got less of the old skein and more of the new skein, I increase the frequency of new skein rows, which I think just creates a bit more of a gradient, which again is probably overthinking it, but it's the way I like to do it and it seems to work out well for me. But yeah, not a whole load to say on that one other than I'm thoroughly enjoying it, and it is for my Out of the Dark make along, which I've really been enjoying seeing everyone's projects. It's so much fun, and the variety of things that people are working on. So this is a make along to get us from the depths of winter at the beginning of January through to the 20th of March, which is the spring equinox. And at that point, there will be much more daylight. and I'll be able to spend a lot more time outside and doing things in the garden, which is really fun, because this time of year, like, it's lovely. We've had a few days of really, really wonderful sun, and yesterday I got back from Unravel Festival, which I was exhibiting at, and also did a talk, and that was so much fun, completely exhausting, but it was really enjoyable. And I got back from that and I told myself I was going to take the whole day off, which is a very, very rare occurrence. And luckily it was a beautiful sunny day and I could just spend some time doing some pruning and clearing things in the garden. And this year I'm really, really hoping to do lots of stuff in the garden. We've got some seeds on the windowsill over there. At the moment we've just got amaryllis and there's an amaryllis there, but seed-wise we've got pepper and basil growing. So the basil will probably just stay inside on windowsills and things, but the peppers, once we get into proper summer when there's no risk of frost or anything, will eventually move outside. But we've got loads of stuff we're planning to grow, because last year we couldn't really access the back garden, which is where we've got a bit more growing space because we had builders working out there. But this year we are free of them, and so I'd like to grow lots more veg, and I'm looking at getting some flax seeds so I can grow my own flax. And I'll be talking a bit more about flax in a minute because I'm currently working on a project that is hopefully going to involve some flax. But yes, so looking forward to spring. We're getting there. Brighter days and the evenings are feeling a little bit longer. There's a bit more daylight and that's encouraging. But if you'd like to enter the make along, there is still time. I'll post a link below so that you can see how to enter. And when we get to the equinox and the make along is finished, I'll be picking projects randomly, both from Instagram and from my Patreon chat and Discord server. And there will be prizes for people who win, and they're going to be really lovely, and I'm so looking forward to that. And at the moment, people's projects are just making me really happy. It's so lovely to see how skilled everyone is and the new things people are learning. And yeah, I highly recommend going and searching the hashtag OutOfTheDarkMal 2025. Because it's just beautiful to see all the projects people are working on. So yeah, I mean, that's it for my knitting. This is the only thing I've been knitting on since the last time I chatted with you. And I'm just kind of taking it at a chilled pace because in the evenings, either I'm knitting on that or I'm working on an ongoing spin, which I've talked about many, many times. So I won't show you because I'm still on the 4th of 4 bobbins for that. It is some of my skewer blend fibre, which I'll show you a bit of later. And I've been spinning it for a long time. I'm quite bored of it and I would like it to be finished. And so to encourage myself, I have been starting work on returning to a project I started a long time ago, which I have in disarray in front of me, and I'm not sure what order to show you things in. Let's do the one I'm working on right now first. So I'll just grab a handful of that. So this is woad dyed fleece. The fleece is from Fernhill Farm. This is Shetland Teeswater wool. And the woad I dyed it with was grown in my old garden, and the colour most people associate with woad is blue, which is what it's known for and why it's a really valuable dye plant, because it's a native source of blue in the UK, and blue is a very rare colour to get from natural dyes. But this is the exhaust from after I'd used the woad leaves I've done a fresh woad leaf extraction, which I actually have a blog post about, and I'll try to remember to link that below. After I've used the leaves to get blue or sometimes green from the leaves, you can chuck them in a pot and use them as like a normal dye plant. So you can simmer them up and they give this lovely, really warm peachy colour. So I have been flicking these locks with my hand carder into fluffy clouds like this. So keeping all the locks aligned. And then the waste of that is this stuff, which I will also keep. It's much shorter fibres and ones with sort of snarly bits and weak fibres and broken tips and things. That I will keep and I will use in more tweedy projects. So these locks I will card on the drum carder, which will then look like this. Obviously different colour. I have been documenting the process of preparing this fibre in a little series on my channel. So again, I'll put a link to that, so if you're interested you can see. And this is the same fleece but dyed with onion skins. The onion skins were mostly grown in my old garden, the garden at the old house, and supplemented with some from our veg box, which we get from Riverford, so we know that those are grown locally as well. And I love how like golden orange this is. And then if we compare to the kind of peachy pink of that. And then I also have some bats that are fleece, again from Fernhill Fibre, but this I believe is Shetland Romney, if I remember correctly. So this is a much paler, sort of soft antique-y gold. So if I just get one of those. I've got these tied up. They're the same sort of format, but they're a bit looser. And I've just got them tied up like that so that they don't get tangled. And so the colours I've got here are those. And my aim for these will be to blend them together, but I would like to weave with them, weave with the yarn I will spin once it's all prepped. But I want two different yarns, so I want to use one for warp and one for weft because that gives an effect I really, really enjoy. And so I am also planning on including a lot of flax. So this isn't line flax. Well, it sort of is. So flax is a plant. When you grow it for fibre, it grows really nice and tall. You want nice long straight stalks with minimal branching, and it is processed quite specifically. It's processed very differently to wool, and the idea is that you want really long fibres. So these ones are long enough that I can again tie a knot in them to stop them from getting tangled. But if I untie to show you, that is pretty much the whole length of a flax plant. So from the root right up to where the seeds start to grow and where the flowers are. You can see why people are described as having flaxen hair. The curls are just because I've had it tied up. It doesn't curl naturally. It doesn't have any sort of crimp to it. It behaves very, very differently to wool. So wool is nice and bouncy. It has a lot of elasticity and memory and crimp. Flax is the opposite. Flax is what we use to make linen. It's very good for use in summer, for keeping cool, but it has no stretch to it. which is why it's much more common to see linen woven rather than knitted. And again, I've got some more long fibres, but these aren't quite as long. So as I've been processing it, I've been sort of sorting it by length. And then we've got shorter fibres still. These are ones that I can still keep kind of parallel. They're still like, there's some length to them. And then we've got fluffy bits, which I love these. They're much softer because they've been processed a lot more. And these are really, really lovely for blending. So what it all comes from is this stuff. So when you're processing flax, ideally you want your stalks all nice and straight and parallel, and you want to try and keep the fibres as parallel as possible. And the aim of processing the flax is to take off the outer bark to get the soft, long, flexible fibres inside. But this, I don't know if you can see, it has lots of bits of bark in it, and the fibres are all tangled and just not really what you're looking for if you want nice, long, smooth flax. So this I got from Flaxland, who are up in the Cotswolds. They are probably the biggest UK grower of flax for fibre. And they are so knowledgeable and wonderful, and they do amazing things. So when I grow flax, I'm hoping to get some seeds from them. And this is what I've been processing, sort of separating out and then trying to get into something usable. There's so much dust coming off this, it's amazing. It's very dusty work, so I usually, when I'm working with this, set out a big old tablecloth on the floor, and I just sit on the floor in slightly mucky clothes and do a good session of flax processing. So what I would like to do is use these bits of shorter fibre to blend with the wool. Have I put them back? I was sure I had some locks there. So to kind of blend these, and I don't know if I want to include flax in both the warp yarn and the weft yarn, or just warp or weft. I still have a lot of decisions to make about this project, and I'm just so excited about it because it's all local fibres and locally grown dyes. Which is the kind of work I really enjoy. So those I will decide once I've finished processing the woad dyed fleece and the flax. I'll then see what sort of weight I have of each fibre, and because ideally I'd want to spin similar quantities of yarn for the warp and weft, but slightly more for the warp, because with warp yarn you end up with wastage on either end of your weaving. And I would aim to spin it really quite fine and then weave it into cloth. And again, depending how much yarn I have will kind of dictate what I end up making from it, but it will hopefully be a garment. And yes, so that will be on my new loom, which I am going to be starting work on very soon. I have got my first warp wound. It's a tiny little test warp. This is some alpaca yarn, which I think is going to be really nice to work with. And I have started documenting the process of learning how to use my new loom on my Patreon channel. So if you're interested in following along with that, you can go and check that out over there. So next we'll be trying to wind this onto the loom. And it's going to be my first time in direct warping. So previously I've used a rigid heddle loom where you basically wind the warp, so the long lengths of yarn that go from one length of the fabric to the other. You sort of set the loom up at one end of a room and then place a peg at the distance away from the loom that you want the length of your warp to be, and then just walk back and forth and sort of thread it as you go. Whereas with the floor loom that I've got now, you wind the warp separately and then thread it onto the loom afterwards. So that's going to be a new process to me, and I've not used the loom before, and I'm changing the setup of the loom because why would I make things easy for myself? So it's a countermarch loom, and I've been chatting with a few people who have sent me some really good resources on different ways you can tie it up and things. So I'm learning more about sort of the slightly more complex side of weaving. I'm not necessarily looking forward to weaving complex patterns. I mostly just want to be able to weave wider widths of fabric, finer fabric, and just to have it be slightly more efficient, because with a rigid heddle loom, it's difficult to get into a flow. Whereas I think with the floor loom, I'm hoping once I'm used to getting it set up and everything, I'm hoping it'll be really enjoyable to weave on. And I will be able to do things like twill without really much extra work. Whereas on a rigid heddle loom, it all ends up getting a bit weird when you start doing interesting patterns. And sort of the more complex you make it, the longer it takes. But yeah, so I'm really looking forward to that. I'm excited to be prioritizing these kinds of projects, which are things that are just for me, but I can share them because they're things I care about. And working with local fibres is so much fun. And yeah, and I have just remembered, I said I only had one knitting project to share with you. I did make another thing. I don't have it with me because it is a tiny little cardigan for my son's teddy bear, which I knitted as a little present for him. I don't have it with me because the teddy bear has to ride in the car to go to nursery now, and then he stays in the car during the day. So he rides up to Bath to my husband's work and then spends the day in the car and then comes back in the evening with my husband and son. And I'm not going to deprive my boy of his bear to show you his cardie, but I can put a photo in so that you can see that. And it was a really satisfying, quick little project because I just did garter stitch. Usually I don't enjoy garter stitch that much, aesthetically, for garments. I think little bits of it can be quite nice. I think you can use it really interestingly. But generally it's not sort of a visual texture I'm drawn to that much. But for kids stuff and stuff for kids bears, it's perfect because you don't have to worry about edging it. It sits nice and flat. If you're working back and forth, you can just knit everything. And so it's a really nice, straightforward thing for small makes. So that was a very nice little palette cleanser project. So I used 3 strands of Jamieson's Spindrift held together. I think it was 2 strands of the colour flax, lots of flax today, and 1 strand of Cornfield, I think it was, which is a slightly more golden yellow. And yeah, it was a really fun project. I think I used 6mm needles. So it was incredibly speedy and very satisfying because of that. So yeah. So the last thing I'm going to show you is... Do I show you the giant basket? Let's show you the giant basket because it's funny and we've got some nice baskets in this one. So that's probably enough of that. I dyed up an enormous amount of fibre for Unravel, and luckily for people who like my fibre and couldn't get to Unravel, there is still some left. So those are going on the website. Well, by the time you're watching this, they will be up now for my patrons. So for approximately £2 a month, you can get early access to shop updates as well as access to my exclusive Discord group. So for 24 hours, the fibre updates are available to patrons only, and then the rest of it goes for general release. So that will be on the website for everyone tomorrow. So I'm just quickly going to show you the colours I've got and the different bases they're on. So first up, I'll do Skewer Blend. This is the blend that I currently have on my spinning wheel, but I'm doing it in a sort of green and orange moody colourway. All the colourways on Skewer Blend are quite moody because of the nature of the fibre. So this one's called Coral Blush and is just very like nice, warm, comforting, earthy colours. And this one is Acanthus, which is a plant that I can never quite decide if I actually like it or not. There's something a bit weird about it, and I think the fact that it does quite well in the shade, like there's just something quite strange and ominous about it as a plant. But this really reminded me of it, that sort of dark, slightly bluish green with little bits of dusty purple. This one was very popular. I think this might be the only braid left of this colour. And then if we stick on the moody colours, we've got 4. So then we've got Grotto. Lots of shades of green. We've got more yellowy greens at this end, and then going to more true greens over this end. These are on Tilth Blend, which is my really sort of comforting wintry blend. So it's a very dark blend. It's got lots of almost black fibres in it naturally. And so it's quite soft and it's really crimpy and bouncy and it's just lovely. So that's Grotto. Named so because we recently went to Stourhead, which is not far from where we live. Beautiful landscape garden, and it has I believe it's 18th century grotto by the lake, which is all covered in moss and ferns, and it's actually not my favourite kind of landscape garden feature. They always look very artificial and lumpy, but they are very much of a time, and they always have a specific atmosphere because they got water flowing through them, and yeah, it's an interesting little like artificial ecosystem. And we've got In the Deepest, which is Moody Blues, and then 2 that are quite similar but will behave differently depending how you choose to spin them. So this one, I have to check that I get them the right way around, Tapestry. So we've got dark sort of pinky reds with a bit of orange at this end, and they gradually go to sort of more gentle, like there are almost some greeny blue shades in there, but they're very, very subtle. And then Creme de Mure, has more of that reddish pinky colour, but it's more evenly distributed. So you've got some of the natural like dark grey showing through. So yeah, if I show you those together. That one's wanting to hide. So very, very grumpy palette there, which I love. And then going on to the lighter coloured blends, which I haven't been listing what breeds are in these because it's just lots and lots of British wool breeds. They are all on the website, and I also have the undyed blends there as well, so you can see what they look like before I dye them up. So these ones are Solace blend. This one's really good for worsted spinning for like a nice crisp springy yarn that would be good for like cables and things. So we have Free Dive, which I really, really enjoy. Lots of bluey greens. Again, with some of the natural lighter grey showing through. I always love the way colours take on this blend because there's something about, I think it's the crimp of the fibres, the combination of crimp and luster, that means they just look like watercolours. It's always so pretty. And then this one is Azalea. So lots of yellow and then little splashes in the middle of very bright pink. You've got some slightly more kind of orangey bits there. But that one I let lots of the natural colour show through. So yeah, I tend to dye in a way that gives you interesting colour placement decisions. Like you can just spin from one end to the other and let the distribution of colours kind of decide itself, but you can do interesting things with sort of splitting the braid and doing fractals and things, and choosing how you can ply it. Like, it's one of the things I love about spinning is, even though you're like, if you're buying hand dyed wool top, which is what this is, you still make design decisions about the yarn that you're making, and so the yarn that someone spins from it could be completely different from yarn that someone else would spin. So then we've got Feather Blend, which we have, I apparently went for two separate vibes on this one. We went green and kind of mauvey. Where are we? So Feather Blend is very, very lustrous. So it's got breeds that have very long staple length and quite a bit of shine to them, as well as just a little bit of halo, which gives it some fuzz to it, which is really fun. And it's quite a thin top, so it's easier to spin fine. And it spins fine nicely as well because of those long staple lengths. It gives more strength to it. And so it just, yeah, it makes it easy to get a fine, consistent yarn. So this one is called Rest is Permitted. I don't always do like affirmations as colourway names, but sometimes it's necessary. So kind of mauvey, pinky purple with some areas of sort of light slaty blue. Yes, very calming and like a contemplative colour. Then A Quiet Place, possibly my favourite of all of these colours. Just very, very calm green. Nothing too bright. It's a slightly bluey green, but with like a bit of warmth to it. And you've got some of the brown showing through from the natural base as well. Then similar, but with more like separation of colour. Sandy Cove, where the overall vibe is green, but you've got areas of more like acidy yellow, and then some tiny sections of brighter, darker blue, just popping through there. And so those ones sort of, they would work very nicely together. So they're similar but very different. And then finally is Crocus Pollen, which again has some of that mauvey, pinky purple, but with a nice bit of warm sort of golden orange. And if I show you those two together, you can see that this one's quite a lot moodier, but still has those purpley mauvey colours. And this one's a bit sort of lighter and fresher, and you've got a bit more of the natural colour showing through. So those would ply very nicely together as well. So yeah, that is a very quick look at those things. I feel like this has been a slightly, I don't know, slightly weird episode. Lots of things I'm enjoying, and so yeah, I'm looking forward to sharing some more videos soon. I think I'm going to try and make a video of how I prepare the flax. I've done a video on that before on my Patreon channel, because there are loads and loads of, there's a big back catalogue of exclusive videos on there. But I think I will do a very quick overview of just what I do with the flax before I decide how I'm going to blend up all of those fibres for my big spin. And I will continue documenting that project in separate little making videos. And hopefully that will include a spinning tutorial, but on a spinning wheel. Yeah. I'm looking forward to making lots of videos for you, and especially as the sun is out a bit more and I get a little bit more light and feel slightly more motivated. So I think that is all I have to share with you this time. Quite a strange piecemeal episode, but I hope you don't mind that. It is really nice to be getting into more of the projects I enjoy. So if you would like to keep up with me between podcast episodes, you can subscribe to my newsletter. If you go on my website, you can sign up, and once you've done the double opt-in thing, you'll receive a discount code which will give you 10% off your next order on my shop. And you'll receive updates on like when I have new things in the shop and pattern launches and when I'm going to be going to events and things. And if you want to keep up with what I'm doing on a more regular, casual level, I share my stuff I'm working on Instagram, and there is always my Patreon channel where I share an exclusive video a month. We've got Zoom calls, and there are discount codes available, and you can get, as I mentioned, early access to shop updates and things. And all of the subscriptions on there help to support this channel and help me keep my work going. So if you'd like to find out more about that, you can click through on the link below. And thank you very much to all of you who subscribe already. It's really appreciated. And so otherwise, I will catch you next time.